Well, good morning everyone. So today we're going to be discussing freedom of expression and if there should be any limits on it. And if there should be any limits on it, what should be those limits? Let's begin. So what exactly is freedom of expression? So Oxford Languages defines freedom of expression as the power or right to express one's opinions without censorship, restraint, or legal penalty. So that's the definition that we'll be dealing with. So why do we even need freedom of expression? Well, for this we'll turn to history, okay? And history has a lot of lessons to teach us. And one of the most important lessons that history has to teach us is the lesson of revolutionary ideas. Ideas that went on to change the world. And these ideas, right, the ideas that went on to change the world were, by definition, not popular beliefs. They were not held popularly. Otherwise, they wouldn't have changed anything because they would already have been popularly held. Okay, so given that these ideas challenged the popularly held notions of the time, they were not quite well received. Okay, people didn't like it when their notions were challenged, right? So it was not rare for the general public to laugh at these free thinkers, right? And they wouldn't just stop there, right? They laughed at them, they said their ideas, these revolutionary ideas, they are silly, right? But it doesn't stop there, right? There is more. Sometimes the general public claimed that these ideas, right, these revolutionary ideas were insulting and had hurt their sentiments. A well-known example of this, right, is the case of Galileo Galilei, who was amongst the first people and the only person in his society to claim that the earth is not the center of the universe. The sun, the moon, the planets don't in fact go around the earth. Okay, it is the earth that goes around the sun and not the other way around. And this challenged the widely held notion of the time that the earth was indeed the center of the universe, quite literally. Okay, and this belief that the earth is the center of the universe was held for religious reasons. Okay, people believe for deeply religious reasons that the earth was the center of the universe. So when Galileo came along and said, look, that's not quite right, okay, that's not what's happening, it's the earth that's going around the sun, people didn't like that. Galileo had allegedly committed some huge crime by challenging what was the religious belief, right? So what happened as a consequence of this? Well, Galileo was silenced, right? There was an extended trial in which Galileo was convicted, and then he was silenced. He was not allowed to express his ideas anymore. He was not killed, as some people seem to believe, but he was put on house arrest and not allowed to express his ideas. Was that justified? I hope that the viewers of this video will agree that that was not indeed justified, right? The silencing of Galileo was not justified. And as it turns out, the man was correct, right? The earth goes around the sun, not the other way around. Okay, so that's what freedom of expression is, and a historical example of why we need it. But surely, just like every other right that we have, right, there needs to be some limitation on freedom of expression, right? Okay, so the two most common proposed limitations on freedom of expression are, number one, blasphemy, and number two, hate speech, right? You cannot utter blasphemy and you cannot utter hate speech, or at least that's the proposal. So let's take a deeper look at both of these one by one, right? So first, let's take the simpler one, blasphemy. You cannot utter blasphemy. Well, the first thing that I'd like to point out to you here is that Galilei too was allegedly committing blasphemy when he said that the earth goes around the sun. And I can already hear what you're going to say next. Well, you see that was the wrong interpretation of the religious scripture at the time. The scripture didn't actually say that, but that was the fault of the people. But when actual blasphemy is committed, when someone actually blasphemes against true interpretation of scripture, well, that should be outlawed, right? Well, not quite. Which interpretation of scripture do you declare to be the true one that cannot be blasphemed against? Your interpretation seems quite arrogant, don't you think? And if you're someone like me, if you're an atheist, as many of you probably are, that means that you hold that no interpretation of scripture is the correct one. And for those of you who are not atheists, who believe in a certain religion, you must know what it feels like because you don't believe in a different religion. If you're a Christian, it would seem quite absurd to you that if someone came along and said that you must abide by the laws of Islam. If you're a Muslim, it would seem equally absurd to you if someone came along and said that you must abide by biblical laws, right? So yeah, blasphemy, that's not a justified limitation on freedom of expression. And the second proposed limitation on freedom of expression is hate speech. So what is hate speech, right? Hate speech, as defined by Britannica.com, is defined as speech or expression that denigrates a person or persons on the basis of alleged membership in a social group identified by attributes such as race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, religion, age, physical or mental disability, and others. And this seems fair enough. Like, this is not like religious beliefs, right? These are not private, personal beliefs that people hold. These are objective truths about human nature, right? Human beings do indeed belong to different racial groups and ethnic groups and groups on the basis of gender and the groups on the basis of sexual orientation and so on and so forth, right? So any speech that denigrates people on the basis of membership to these groups, surely that has to be limited, right? That cannot be allowed, correct? This too runs into a very similar, not the same, but a very similar problem to that of blasphemy laws. Who decides what qualifies as hate speech? Let me give you an example, right? According to all three of the primary Abrahamic religions, which are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, according to all three of them, right, or at least according to certain interpretations of these religions, homosexuality is a sin, right? It's not allowed. Is the teaching of these religions, which teach hatred for gays, is that hate speech? Are these scriptures of those religions hate speech because they promote hatred for gays? Or is me pointing out the fact that these religions teach hatred for gays, is me pointing that out considered hate speech? Who decides? I think I am correct, right? Otherwise I wouldn't be saying what I'm saying. But who is the legal authority that decides for me, that puts into the legislation that I am correct, right? I don't think there is one. I don't think there is an authority qualified enough to be able to make that judgment. I know what you're thinking, right? You're thinking that he has picked an easy example, right? Because on the one side, we definitely have to treat gays as equal human beings, right? And on the other side, there is the point about respecting religious beliefs. He has picked an easy fight. So let me pick a more clear example, right? I'll do that, right? And the example that I'm picking for this case, right, are expressions of white supremacy and racism. Right? So if a white supremacist comes along and he says that, you know, white people are the most supreme race of people, and all of these other people from Asia and Africa, anywhere else in the world really, these are inferior to us and they should be ethnically cleansed, right? So that's something that the white supremacist is saying. So surely someone might be tempted to think that person needs to be censored, they should not be allowed to say any of that. But is that really the most effective way? And here's the thing, okay, this white supremacist, they will not be able to make sense And why will they not be able to make sense? It's simple, because they hold an illogical belief. They will not be able to make sense out of that. Okay? And so let them speak, right? Let them speak and let the whole world see, let everyone see what a stupid idea that they hold, right? If you want to, you can even debate them and make it easier for everyone else to see that their beliefs are ridiculous. And at least in the case of white supremacy, I'm going to tell you that it's going to be really, really easy to debunk it, because it's really, really stupid. But when you silence the white supremacist, someone might be tempted to think, oh, why have these people silenced that guy, the white supremacist? Did he have something to say which these people cannot refute? Let me go and talk to him in private. And so this person, let's call him David, goes to the white supremacist. Let's just call him White, right? And David goes and talks to White, and then they have a talk, and like the white supremacist is still spewing nonsense, but this time the conversation is in private, right? You're pushing them to have the conversation in private, right? And in this case, David might not be able to see the errors in the arguments that the white supremacist is making, which he would have been able to see had the white supremacist been making them in public, because there would have been opposition to what he's saying, right? There would have been people who would be pointing out flaws in what the white supremacist is saying. So the example of the white supremacist is a bit extreme, but it makes the point, right? And you don't have to agree with people for whom you allow freedom of expression. Indeed, as Noam Chomsky said, if we do not believe in freedom of expression for those we despise, then we do not believe in freedom of expression at all. Okay, so what we just discussed were reasons on why we'll get by just fine without putting any kind of limitations on free speech. But there are indeed people who are saying objectively bad things, right? So what's the problem with just putting a limitation on their capacity to be able to express their opinions, right? Like, yeah, we'll get by just fine without doing that, but we can, so let's do it, right? Well, no. When you give an authority the power to be able to ban free speech, what you'll inevitably do is give them too much power, right? So tomorrow, if you were to say something which isn't objectively bad, right, but something that they perceive to be bad, there's something they perceive to be objectively hateful, and they'll put a limit on you as well. So when you ban free speech, right, you have no ground to stand on when someone bans your right to express your opinions when they are not indeed bigoted but just perceived as such, because they happen to be so different from what is generally agreed upon. I want to address one final thing, right? It's so what we've discussed so far in that second section, right, about hate speech. Hate speech can sometimes involve incitements to violence, right? So someone saying something like, anyone who isn't white, like those people should be ethnically cleansed, right? That's an incitement of violence. And I've already explained why that is, like why we should let them speak, right? Because it's so stupid, everyone will see how stupid they are. Like I've already explained that, right? So a different thing which people seem to think is an objection to freedom of expression are threats of violence, direct threats of violence. So when someone is saying something like, you know, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to punch you, things like those, right? Should there be legal action against those people? Yes. But the problem lies not in the fact that they have said that they're going to kill you. The problem lies in the fact that they're going to kill you. Okay? So this person who has declared that they're going to kill you, let's call that person A, okay? And then there's another person B, and for some reason there was a search of the house of person B, and there was some evidence discovered to show that person B also has an intent to kill you, and the evidence is such that how sure you can be that person B has an intent to kill you is equivalent to person A, right? Both of them seem to have a similar level of intent. the legal action that should be taken against both of these people should be equal. So the problem lies not in the fact that person A said something. The problem lies in the fact that person A, just like person B, had an intent to kill. So yeah, if someone makes direct threats of violence, there should be legal action against them, but that's not an argument against the right to freedom of expression. That's been it for today. I have been Aditya Prakash, or Soytheist. If you like the video, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. You can follow me on social media here, and I'll see you in the next one.